Welcome to the show. You watch UAP Troop 33. I'm John, I'm your host. And tonight, we're going to examine one of the most controversial, wild claims from the Skywatcher program, which that consists of Jake Barber, Michael Batista, Matthew Pines, Dr. Gary Nolan, and others. And it had to do with a landing event, something that's going to challenge your whole idea of physics, the psychic phenomena, consciousness, and UFOs. So, this landing, it wasn't a distant light, not a blurry orb, but this was a craft. Something behaving strange. We're talking shape-shifting, descending into our world, and an intelligence that did not stay in a single shape. At one point, he describes it, and the video shows that it may have had wings. So please stay tuned, it's going to get wild. I'll be right back. First, I want to talk about who the Skywatcher team is. Skywatcher is not your typical UFO group. It's a hybrid team. 4 military operators, intelligent analysts, scientists, and what they call psionic assets. Individuals who claim to interface with the phenomenon through consciousness. Pretty much summoning UFOs. Jake Barber, the founder, is a former Air Force veteran who says he's been involved in UAP crash retrieval operations. Michael Batista is a former Green Beret, and he's one of the team's psionic operators. Matthew Pines, who's a national security analyst, who brings a more sober, strategic lens to the whole operation. Then you got Dr. Gary Nolan from Stanford University. Together, they built the framework that blends high-end sensors, electromagnetic signaling, meditation, and what they call consciousness-based interaction. And their claim is simple and radical. The phenomenon responds to intention. Now, this is where the story gets kind of crazy. It leaves the realm of nuts and bolts UFOs, right? You know, a lot of people think of UFOs as being physical, nuts and bolts. You know, that's not really what this was. I mean, I wouldn't say that these things can't fully manifest in our reality as nuts and bolts, but that's not what this interaction was. This was something different, right? Batista claims that the object settled, a presence, an intelligence became perceptible. Not visually at first, but mentally. He was interacting with it psychically, right? And he said that it felt like there was a pressure behind his eyes, and he became docile. And then a form appeared. Not humanoid at first, not animal, not anything that fits into our biological categories. The thing was just shape-shifting. And then it did form into this humanoid shape. And at one point, it appeared like it had wings. And when it did appear humanoid, it looked like something you would see on a petroglyph. So it really makes you wonder if these ancient humans had interactions with these beings in the past. But in this case, the witnesses described a silhouette that rippled, limbs that appeared and vanished, and a body that seemed to be made of light, shadow, and intention rather than matter. Witnesses describe a silhouette that rippled, limbs that appeared and vanished, a body that seemed to be made of light, shadow, and intention rather than matter. At one point it had wings like an angel. At another point it appeared almost like some type of being you would see on a petroglyph. So it was kind of strange, right? And the fact that he said it, he felt like he was docile, like he was interacting with something psychically, is pretty strange. And the fact that he's a special forces operator making these claims kind of lends credibility to the whole thing. You got Dr. Gary Nolan from Stanford, you got Matthew Pines, who's an intelligence analyst. So these people aren't just random kooks, right? But Matthew Pines reportedly described it as an intelligence that was projecting a representation of itself into our perceptible bandwidth. That's how he described it. An intelligence projecting a representation of itself into our perceptible bandwidth. So was it interdimensional, interfacing? What was this, right? So Skywatcher's interpretation is bold, right? Because it says they believe the entity wasn't changing shape. It was flickering between states, like a hologram struggling to render in our 3D reality. So was it from some other higher dimensional reality, and this was the only way that we could perceive it? I don't know. I mean, these questions are all valid questions, right? But this aligns with remote viewing literature, Jacques Vallée's interdimensional hypothesis, John Keel's ultra-terrestrial model, and modern physics discussions about higher dimensional objects intersecting with 3D space. So like imagine like a 4D object passing through, our reality. We would see only slices of it, shifting, inconsistent, kind of impossible to see clearly, which would kind of appear the way this thing would appear, right? So that's what Skywatcher believes happened.
In his interview with me.
And all night, it would just keep me waiting, and then something would show up, and then it would pique my interest. What was that? And then hours go by again, and then something would pop up. Like, what is that? And it kept doing that all night until the very end, when this triangle showed up. And that was only part of it. That was definitely the grand show, but...
What did you see?
So I had just witnessed something that was unbelievable to me. And I turned to talk to my friend. I was like, that was unreal.
What did you see? What was it?
So the beginning of the show, if you will, this thing popped up way out in the atmosphere, and it started to fall. And it felt like if you'd imagine putting a really small pebble in the water, and it just kind of flutters down. That's what it was doing, just fluttering down. And as it got closer and closer, it get brighter and brighter. And when it hit the very bottom of its movement, it was the brightest thing out there. Just imagine brighter than any star you've seen out there, just lit up. It did that for, a millisecond, and then it dimmed back down, and it did the same movement all the way back up into the atmosphere.
One of the things that you'd mentioned to me off camera was that you'd been fasting. You'd been very careful about what you ate in the period prior to this experience with these entities.
Right, so I get these things, I call them downloads, like Neo from the Matrix. I know Kung Fu, just instantly. It's like you just get this zap of information that's just kind of forced into my brain, or I just receive it like an antenna. And, it's like little nudges that I get, especially when I'm asking this NHI, like, with my consciousness, like what do I need to do? Like, what do you guys want from me? How can I do this better? How can I get you guys to come closer? What am I doing wrong? And that was just one of the downloads, and it makes sense. Like, we live in a very toxic world, and if something isn't from this world, we would need to be in a contamination room for a couple days before we could even get that close. And after, I woke up with those strange marks, and it was almost like an inoculation, like it was like needle holes, and maybe it was them hitting me with something, so I could be around them in the future. Who knows? But I did get sick after that first occurrence. I got sick with a pneumonia. I'd never had a pneumonia before that occurrence. So,
had you been fasting in the period prior to that encounter?
Yes. So back to the download. I was fasting. I was trying to just detox my body, and you could think, look clearer, and just get all the poisons and junk out of your body that we consume daily, just being American.
So do you think that was relevant to why you had the encounter you did?
I don't think that because I fasted, they came and landed. I think they landed because it was agitating them.
You goaded them to, yeah.
want to touch on this psionic connection, right? Because this is the strangest part. Batista claims the entity was aware of, right? That they were communicating, not physically, but like mentally, right? And he describes like a sense of being scanned, a feeling of shared attention, a moment where his thoughts were not entirely his, which would kind of freak me out a little bit, right? But Skywatcher interprets this as a bi-directional consciousness interaction. The same mechanism they believe allows them to call the phenomenon to them, right? How they can summon the things. But if this is true, this suggests the intelligence wasn't just interdimensional, but it was interfacing. That there was a connection. So what does this mean, right? If the Skywatcher account is accurate, and look, that's a big if. I want you guys to use your own critical thinking here. But if this is accurate, then this landing event challenges every UFO model, right? And the whole strictly nuts and bolts things go out the window. But it does kind of connect some of the inconsistencies that we've seen with experiencers in the past, right? So there is a multidimensional aspect to it, but at the same time, it can manifest itself as nuts and bolts in our reality. At least that's what we think. But it also suggests the phenomenon isn't strictly physical. It can manifest in multiple forms. Not only that, but it can interface with people psychically, right? Which is kind of scary if you think about it, because if these things would have bad intentions for us, could they influence our thoughts? Could they influence, people's behavior? That in and of itself is kind of scary. And the other aspect is that these things may exist outside of space-time. So would they be able to manipulate our reality through space-time, right? If they're able to appear at different times and places, could they manipulate world events? Look, these are huge questions, man. And then that brings me to the whole spiritual aspect, the whole Chris Bledsoe side of it. Could this be a spiritual thing also? And consciousness may be the bridge between their world and ours, right? And so this is not the extraterrestrial hypothesis. This is something different, something far older, far stranger, and it's woven more deeply into the fabric of reality, right? I mean, the implications are huge.
Out to each side.
It came down as it looked like a cube with something sticking out the top, and then it started morphing into certain things. Then it turned into something you'd see on a petroglyph, and then after that, I saw a humanoid-looking form of it, and he was like wearing a skin-tight metallic purple suit, greenish, grayish, bluish skin. It was nighttime in the camera, and then after that, that's when it appeared as what you're talking about. And in the video, like when I was seeing it in person for the first time, I was like, oh, that kind of looked like an angel to me, because it kind of had like the wings like this and like a light emanating at the top, like a halo. But as it got closer, it wasn't that, stereotypical, image of an angel you get, when you think of the Bible. It was a solid craft that was lit up in that way.
At this point, is whatever the object is, entity, object, whatever you want to call it, is it telepathically communicating with you?
So at this point, I was in that docile mind frame, and I don't think that it was. I think it was induced, almost, because like once it actually hit the ground and I saw how big it was no bigger than 3.5 feet, and it probably didn't want me to come closer. Like Ross, if something landed right here next to me now, I'd probably be more inclined to walk up to it. And see what that's about, but that wasn't the thing. And the fact that I was even able to reach for my phone, I was fighting it, and some of those shots are very shaky. I actually had reached for both phones, and I was trying to see which one looked better, but it wasn't. It was just so surreal that it's hard to describe and replicate unless you're in that position.
But what certainly what I'm seeing, and I think what you say you saw, you see some kind of what looks like a being. It's got an ovoid head, small eyes, a mouth. What would it be?
And it had like a
fair to
football
say?
head.
Do you think it would be fair to say that it looks like an insect,
Well,
like a praying mantis?
I saw a lot of things that night. That the photo I think you're talking about. Because you see the purple. If that's the one, that to me looked like a gray because it was so small. But as the experience progressed, it started to. I saw more than one entity that night. And I did see something that looked like an insect for sure, like a praying mantis.
I'm watching this on real time, and you need to go frame by frame, but what you can see is it kind of moves between looking like an insect, like with that ovoid football-shaped head, and then it's like the classic grey head, like the Whitley Strieber Communion book with the round bulbous head. And you can see why it looks like an angel, because you see what looked like wings coming out from the side of it. It's quite extraordinary.
Yeah, it's that was something that took time to actually cope with after the fact. Like what just happened to me.
Are you scared?
Sure
Are you scared at this point, Mike? Is there any apprehension in you at this time?
No, there was none. It was strangely casual. It was too calm. It reminds me because the petroglyphs out in Utah we just saw, those same ones were holding heads, like they're calling it the headhunters. And I was like, well, maybe it's like an interface and it's like touching something, like we would. But it seems like it was a being, and then it grabbed onto something. But then later on in the video, it almost looks like that centerpiece stays consistent, and it's like almost like a portal, and things are coming in and out of it.
So I'm just stepping forward very quickly, because there is just a most breathtaking moment. It's uncanny, Mike. It's the moment where I think irrefutably there is an image of what looks like a humanoid head, but it's not human. It's alien. It's got a long neck, a football ovaloid head, dots for eyes, black dots for eyes, a black dot for a mouth. Talk me through did you see this at the time?
Is that the one that looks like he's leaning up against something? He's sitting up against it?
It's literally all you're seeing is a translucent white blue object showing looks like a mantis being or I don't know what it is, but essentially
right. And those things were only like, it happened so quick, and I saw so many different beings. Like the Mantis Being was one. I saw something look like a gray. And then actually, if you look above the white ethereal guy crouching, there's like this bluish, it almost looks like a mask or a face that's been, there was like another taller entity that was, behind. Like there was so much going on there, and you could see in the video, like every 10 to 15 frames.
Skeptics who say that Carl and you have done something to the vision. But essentially all you've done is lift the brightness, lift the contrast, and zoom. There's no other changes that have been made to this image.
And I invite all the debunkers and skeptics, and I'm not here to try to prove anything to anybody. Like I encourage independent research. Take a look for yourself. But yeah, we isolated that corner piece of the raw footage, and we manually stabilized it because I'm over here like this, and then we just adjusted the hues a little bit, the exposure, brightness, that kind of stuff, and it made the figures pop, and you're able to really see. But it wasn't until we slowed down the frames even more that like a whole nother world dawned upon us, that it was just shocking.
Okay, so at around about 4 minutes 45 on that video, I'm just going to roll that and get you to talk me through it. What I'm seeing is a kind of a blurry, greeny blue object. I presume that's some kind of platform that they were sitting on. And you see what looks like two heads. Can you talk me through what we're seeing?
Right. So it looked like if the craft maybe was shaped like an egg, for example, like it opened up like this, and there was two beings there. There was one in the middle, and then another one. They were moving around a little bit, and that's when you could see like the mantis arms at some point reaching out for the skull. And sorry, I mistake earlier in the we were talking about the first video. I mixed it up with the second video. So, but yeah, this is where he reaches his arm out, and it looks like he's holding the skull.
Okay, let me go to that. Let me go to that very quickly so that we can talk through it. I need to guide the editor. I mean, ultimately, all the way through this, it looks like it's phase shifting. What do you think is going on? Do you think these creatures are coming interdimensionally? I mean, I'm not aware of what you're being told telepathically, but are you being given any clues as to what's happening here, as to where they're coming from? Because it looks to me like they're sort of...
I think it's telling me a story. Like, it was trying to show me so much at once, almost like, it showed me in the last video things in a specific order, which led me down this path that, to find, those carved in stone. I think it's similar here. And I was up till 4 a.m. dealing with that video. I was texting you at 3 a.m. that video. And, it would change into other entities. Like, it would stay like those two figures would stay there, like in the same relative area, but they would change into different beings. There's actually one that it changes into that looks like it's wearing like one of the Egyptian headdresses. And I can't even count the number of beings that I thought I saw in that video alone. Like, there would be like after every 10, 15 frames, if you slow it down, it changes to a new being, and then like a whole new landscape or craft around it. Like it, you have to see for
It appears to be peeking from around that screen. What do you think that is? Can you talk me through what we're looking at?
Right. So, like earlier in the video, I mentioned it looked like that mantis was grabbing something by the head, right? But that figure in the middle stayed consistent throughout the video, and it almost like it was a portal, and things were poking his head in and out of it, and like poking around it, and it always stayed like in the middle. And no matter how many times the craft or environment changed or shape shifted, like that middle piece would always like be glowing, or like like an interface or some sort of portal, like, and they're always seeing things peeking out from behind it.
Through it afterwards.
There's a mantis. This is my footage. Like the headhunter's a legend. Has a freaking head in his hand. This is it right here. Keeps turning into all this stuff. It's like telling a story. You slow it down, you can really see what's going on. Back again. Well, frame by frame right now. That was that.
What do you see? I mean, it looks to me like there's one guy sitting on the left in some kind of platform, and then there's another creature or entity.
So what did the Skywatcher team encounter that night? Was it a craft? Was it a being? A projection? A dimensional echo? Or something we don't have language for yet? Whatever it was, it didn't just land, it arrived in a way that defies physics, biology, and our assumptions about reality. And the intelligence itself. Whatever's behind these craft, whatever manifested that night, right? And if Skywatcher is right, this wasn't an isolated event. It was an invitation, and that they're able to do this repeatedly, and they claim they're going to. Their plans is to obtain one of these craft. So I'll keep covering it. So keep watching. I'm John. You're watching UAP Truth 33. Please like, subscribe, share it with a friend. Share it with 2 friends. Be back tomorrow. Peace.